Hey everyone, just want to say a quick thanks to everyone who's already subscribed. It means a lot. And if you're new here, welcome. Glad you found your way over. This channel's officially been up for an entire month now, which makes it older than most of my houseplants. This is my second full-length video, so we're still in the early days figuring things out here. We have hit 13 subscribers so far, which is just about 5 million short of being able to quit my day job and paint dollies that I print on my 3D printer full time. Not a big deal. Anyway, let's see where this goes. Normally I'd like to start these videos out by showing you a dry fit model, but I could not get this model to stand upright without having to glue it together, and it kept falling apart, so you'll have to wait till the end to see how it turned out. I started out by covering the whole base with a pretty generous coat of a darker gray coat. Any dark gray would have done. And then I came back and hit the shadows with the black. Most of that stuff no one's going to see anyway because no one picks the model up and holds it upside down. And then I hit the top highlights with a blue-black. While the base dries, I went in and started coloring in all the main parts of the suit with an off-white color. I used a Pro Acryl Ivory. I really like the Pro Acryl line, all the paints that I've used from it. They go through the airbrush really well, and they lay on really smooth. After that, I'm going to come in and do all the shadows with a mix of Vallejo Game Color Glacial Blue and Apothecary White. I originally was going to use just the Apothecary White contrast paint, but it didn't have any real blue tint to it, so I wanted to add that in there. It's pretty subtle, and it doesn't stand out too much, but it does give it a little bit more shade. And then I did the highlights on those white parts of the suit with a flat Vallejo white. After that, I used a magic blue on the gloves, the belt, and the holster, and used a dark flat blue in the shadows. To get that highlight on top of those, I just added a little bit of lighter blue into the magic blue. Now back to the base, I've got to start working on this dirt mud area around the tires, or maybe it's rocks. I'm going to call it dirt. That's how I'm painting it. I used a burnt umber color here, but any dark brown would have worked, and you'll see soon I ended up covering it up anyway, so it doesn't really matter what color I used. Once that paint's dried, I came back and added Diorama FX Thick Mud to here. It's just got like a sand texture to it. It looks like mud when it's dry. It comes in a bunch of different shades, or you can just paint it whatever shade you want when you're done with it. It's pretty versatile if you're making any type of dioramas. While we wait for that thick mud to dry, which can take about an hour or more depending on how thick it is, I used a cork color to come in and start dry brushing some dirt, dust, weathering effects into the treads of the tires here. And then I took an aluminum paint and carefully painted the wheel inside the tire, which I'll come back and dull later on once that's dry. This is a great time to tell you a bit about this model. I picked it up from Nom Nom Figures as part of their April 2025 Patreon package that I pay for myself. Anyone who grew up in the mid-90s and played video games knows who Earthworm Jim is. He's such a unique character. I remember falling in love with his art style when I was a child, so fast forward like 30 years later, and I see him pop up in my Instagram feed, and I knew I had to paint him. Once all that was dry, I took a handful of different dry pigments. I used a brown, a black, and a light gray, and I mixed it with a pigment binder, and I just started jamming that all up anywhere where there'd be mud and dust pushed up in there. I put it into the wheel well there. Maybe that's called the wheel well. I don't know. I'm not a mechanic. I just make things dirty looking with paint. Then it's time to take some bronze paint and paint some of this trim. He's got this trim on his boots. He's got it on his gloves, which I'll end up doing later on. And I also used the same Pro Acro bronze to do the belt buckle and the buckles on the straps that go across his chest. My experience with Pro Acro metallic paints is that they go on super smooth, whether you're airbrushing them or using a regular brush. They've got excellent coverage and leave a clean, even finish without that chunky or streaky metallic look you sometimes get with other brands. My favorites are rich gold, bronze, and dark silver from that line. Next up, I just took that same old Vallejo model color black and I painted the soles of his boots. I'm not sure if that's the color they are supposed to be, but that looked good to me. Now coming back to finish up the midsection here, I used the Pro Acro bronze paint, which you only really need one coat of a lot of the time, I find. I can't think of the last time I used 2 coats to cover anything. It covers up all kinds of paints really well. So I used that for the belt buckle, and then I used the Pro Acro dark silver to start painting some of the little ammunition pieces around the belt. And I also used the same color to paint the little buttons on the pouches on that belt. And then I'm just going to do a quick test fit here, just make sure the holster and the belt all line up well. Once that's done, I grab that magic blue again and start painting the parts of the straps that are attached to the main part of the chest. So just carefully painting those lines, trying really hard not to go over anywhere by accident. This is the first model that I had done where there was so much white on it, or off-white, and I discovered really fast that if you slip up just a little bit and make a mistake with a darker color and it goes into the white, like say your brush falls off the strap a bit or your paint's too thin and it runs just a little bit when you get too close to the edge, it is a real pain in the ass to go back and correct that white paint, because white does not want to cover up blue very well. And because I had airbrushed that and there were several different layers of whites and that shadow as well, it's just really hard to get that both covered up again and then have that match and not be too white or too dark or look like a big splotch of paint. So I did go back and make a few small corrections here, but lesson learned. Happens to everybody. Almost done with the straps now. I just took some more of that Pro Acro bronze and used that to paint the little buckles on the straps in his chest. And then I will also take that same bronze and do that whole neck cover piece there with that. I have no idea what the collar around the neck on a spacesuit is called. It's like a space turtleneck or astronaut neck donut. Whatever it is, it looks important, so I'm not going to pretend that I know what I'm talking about, and we'll just finish up and move on.
There are people who are afraid of the future. They're afraid of the unknown, of what they don't
Almost
know.
finished painting these chest strap pieces. I'm just going in and adding some of that
Everything
dark
that is new
silver to
frightens them.
the little ammunition vials, whatever they are.
And when they are afraid, hate is the only solution for them.
Earthworm Jim is truly one of the most brilliant fever dreams to crawl out of the 90s, and we'll probably never see anything like him again. Someone came up with this idea to throw a squishy garden worm into a muscle-bound spacesuit and give him a ray gun, but no helmet, just his tiny worm head flopping around in the open air, like he's immune to the vacuum of space. And with those pieces done on the straps, it's time to glue them into place. That whole middle section is done now. You could use an epoxy. I ended up using CA glue with an accelerator. If parts are light enough, I usually just use super glue, but if it's going to support any weight or the parts are heavy,
Time is
I
like
always
a long
recommend
blade of
attaching
grass.
pieces of the model with a 5
Some bend over when
or
they
20 minute
climb, and
epoxy.
others swing from blade to blade.
Starting to paint the blaster now. I
Welcome to
used
the
squid
future.
pink as a base coat for both the red and yellow parts of this blaster. Pink makes a really good base coat for yellow because of how colors interact through layering and how they affect the final appearance. Yellow is a translucent light color, so what's underneath it is really important. If you use something like pink, you'll get a really warm and vibrant look. If you used white underneath the yellow, then you would have ended up with something that was a little brighter, but more cold in color. Once that was done, I used Imperial Fist Yellow for the parts of the blaster that needed that, which were the front and the energy channel things on both sides. Sticking with those bright, vibrant colors, I used Bold Pyrrole Red for the body of the ray gun, and I ended up having to use 2 or maybe 3 coats of this. It's got really good coverage, but I really wanted to make sure it was as bright as possible. Where most of this model is just really light color, so this whole suit is mostly white and ivory and a really light blue. I wanted to make sure that all the other parts were as bright and cartoony as possible.
Welcome to the future.
Here I did a technique that I haven't used before, so I wasn't sure how it was going to turn out. I took some small pieces of 28 gauge stainless steel wire and put a bunch of small bends in it with some tiny pliers and painted the all over with bright white, and then covered that with Tesseract glow. And then I took those bent wires and I glued them onto the ray gun there. And then I used a bright white to touch up any places where the ends of that wire met the ray gun on both sides. And then I used that same white to go in and spray a couple areas where there'd be a reflection of that green glow on the rest of the blaster. And then I took some more Tesseract glow and sprayed that over the white to give it that OSL look. And then I used that same bronze that I've used a couple other times and did the bands on the hands there, the gloves. And now we're on to the very last part of the model. It's the head. I used the same 2 base colors that I used for all my flesh tones because he is a worm, so he's kind of the same colors. Warlord purple over the highlights and any type of red, deep red in the shadows and recesses. From there, I came in with a sunny skin tone as the base flesh color, and then did the highlights of that with a basic skin tone. And then I used a contrast Gilliman flesh in the shadows to bring some more contrast and give a nice transition between the shadows and the midtones. And then I used a Magos purple to do the inside of the mouth and the inside of the lips. And I did the same thing to the eyes. And I also used the Magos purple, you'll see in a minute, to put a little, like a light purple band around part of the top of the head. If you've ever looked at an earthworm, a lot of them seem to have that little reddish purpley band up around the top there, closer to their head. Or at least I think they do. Maybe I made that up, I don't know. For the teeth, I used dark sand color. It doesn't sound like it'd be a very good tone for teeth, but it registers a bit different with the rest of the colors around it, I think. So you don't want anything too white, it will look pretty artificial. The important part when you're painting teeth like this, where they're all kind of touching, is that you leave a little bit of space in between each tooth, so you're just painting each individual tooth. Otherwise, it would look like one big blobby tooth. Man, it would look terrible. So take your time, use a small brush. After that, I used ivory color to do a couple of coats on the eyes, being sure to leave a bit of that Magos purple still showing up around the edges and in the corners of the eyes. In hindsight, I probably should have laid down something before the ivory paint, perhaps a light pink. It would have made it so I didn't have to put 3 coats of this ivory paint over top of the eyes. When you're brush painting the eyes, you really want to make sure that the coats are as thin as possible, because you don't want any clumping paint in the eyes. It really stands out in the finished product. You want them as smooth as possible. So take your time and thin paint down somewhere around the 50-50 paint and water. And then once that's all done, you can take a gloss varnish, and I covered the whole of the eyes, both of them, with a gloss varnish. And I took the opportunity while I had that gloss varnish out to also do the inside of the mouth and the teeth, and the insides of the eyelids, just anywhere where you want that wet look when you're finished. Now for this one, I chose to use water slide decals that I made for the eyes, because I wanted them to be perfectly round, and sometimes my hands shake too much, so I sometimes cheat a bit and use the water slide decals. I just make them in Photoshop and print them off on the printer. I know some people watching this might think that using a water slide decal is the easy way out, and that I should have painted the eyes. And I have painted plenty of eyes in the past, but if you don't like water slide decals, then don't use them. After this, I used the hairdryer to quickly dry that gloss varnish, and then to prepare the eyes for the water slide decals, I used Decal Fix. And that Decal Fix just is another thin coat that you want to dry before you put the decals on, and that helps the decals adhere to the surface a little bit better. And I just pull up a reference picture of the model there to make sure I've got the pupils in the right direction and the right spots on the eyes. And then once those are in the right place, which took seemingly forever, if you find that they're sticking a little bit, then you can put a little bit of water on a brush, and then you can move them around a little bit better like that. And then you can use a decal softener afterwards and put that over top of the pupils, and that will help make sure that the decals sort of take the shape of the item they're sitting on. And then just cover all that again with a gloss varnish. Now to finish up the eyes, I just took a little bit of my brightest white and used a toothpick to put a couple dots of white to simulate reflection of light onto the eyes to make that a bit more real looking, and follow that with one more gloss varnish coat. And just one more piece to paint after this is the turtleneck or collar that's around the bottom of his neck there, and I just used an ivory paint for that. If you watched this entire video, a massive thank you for the support. If you enjoyed the video, it would mean the world to me if you shared it with your friends or your spouse, even if they don't like painting videos, make them watch it anyway. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up, drop a comment, even if it's just to roast my brush control or paint techniques, and subscribe if you want to keep leveling up your painting game with me. This one's done, and it is ready to go up on the shelf.